What's going on, everybody? It's that time again. It's the Sooners Illustrated Podcast, episode 57 on this Thursday, February the 8th, 2024. Josh Callaway, Collin Kennedy with you on a Thursday. National Signing Day yesterday. Doesn't have the hoopla because of the December one, but we'll recap.
Are you sure?
Yeah, just a little bit. I should say on my end. Maybe for you guys, for CK and some of our great recruiting experts, but we're going to recap it. We're going to look at some of the biggest names, underrated gets, all that. We're going to do some superlatives for the 2024 signing class for Oklahoma. We're going to hit some other recruiting news. The commit they picked up earlier this week. Want to get CK's breakdown of that, of course, Ryan Foji. And we'll wrap it up with a little bit of basketball talk after a sorely needed home win for Porter Moser and that squad on Tuesday night at the LNC. But Collin, like I kind of said, signing day yesterday. Nobody new signed. I guess that's really what I kind of was getting at for Oklahoma. The entire class signed back in December, which we talked about then. We kind of surmised the class. Nothing crazy happened for Oklahoma in between now and then. So as we wrap up this 2024 class, we thought, what's a different way we can kind of attack it, bring it up, talk about it on the show? We decided, let's do some superlatives. We're going to do MVP, under the radar get, underrated player, guy we're most excited about, day one ready. We have a few other ones that we're going to run through here. Collin will have some different answers, and it'll be a little bit of a fun way to kind of go through the class and talk about some names that we want to talk about. So, I think did you have something?
No, I was just going to say, I think it's a really fun way to contextualize the 2024 class with what we kind of now know, given that not only are all 27 guys enrolled and signed, but a lot of them are already on campus. So we're kind of doing these superlatives with a little bit of intel too, right? So, I'm excited for this. And like you mentioned, it didn't even feel like signing day was a thing yesterday. I woke up 7 a.m. compared to either a sleepless night or maybe the 3:30, 4 a.m. alarm. And it's kind of like one of those things where, all right, how do we even talk about this? But I think this is going to be kind of a fun way to put a bow on the cycle.
Yeah, a little different than Daniel Akinkunmi signing at, 4 a.m. or something back in December. Pretty hectic list, stress-free for Oklahoma yesterday, like I said, because you got your whole class in December. So let's recap it a little bit. So names that we wanted to get onto the show. The first one is class MVP. This is the one that I think we'll talk about the least because it's very obviously David Stone. Collin and I both have different names we're going to bring up for each one of these. But for this one, we were like, why even do that? Why bother? David Stone's very clearly and obviously the class MVP, 5-star defensive lineman, culture setter, all of that, all the stuff that everybody already knows. He's a guy coming in ready to make a huge impact, both what he's going to do on the field as well as off it. He's clearly a guy that other guys gravitate around. Class MVP pretty easily, right? I mean, Collin, you want to throw in anything real quick? I mean, this is a no-brainer.
Next.
He's also wearing number 0, which is hard.
It's crazy good. Look.
Really good.
He's positional need, like you mentioned, vocal leader. He also was like the lead recruiter for Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. Everything about David Stone screams class MVP, and we'd get screamed at if we didn't make him the MVP. So next.
Number 2, biggest get. This is subjective. Obviously, a lot of directions you can take it. I'll let you start. Biggest get of this 2024 class.
Yeah, so again, we wanted to make sure we were throwing out different names for these, and part of this for my selection is accounting for the fact that David Stone is class MVP, because biggest get, sure, it's David Stone, right? He was on the radar for Oklahoma since he was in like 8th grade. He was a 5-star defensive tackle, all that stuff that we just talked about. But David Stone is off the table. So now he cannot be picked.
He's drafted, yeah.
Yeah. So who is the biggest get if David Stone is not on the table for selection? And to me, that's Jaden Jackson, Josh. I think that when you contextualize the recruitment first, he didn't even want to take his visit. I mean, the guy literally was not going to even try to look at Norman. He didn't take an unofficial. His official visit, he didn't want to go. And he arrives on campus as like I'll give the 5th school in my top 5 a little bit of grace. And he said within the first 10 minutes, he wanted to commit to Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And to flip that recruitment on its heels completely. Like, I still remember we were at Big 12 Media Days together, and I got a call saying, look, I don't know how this is possible, but Jaden Jackson is basically not taking anyone's phone calls right now. And for that to be the case when heavy hitters were involved, like Ohio State, Texas, Miami, and at one point or another, I would probably say all three of those schools felt like they had a lead. Not only was this recruitment just wild to follow and to beat out all these other programs that you were trailing by a pretty substantial amount. But then, Josh, we kind of get into some of the same reasons that David Stone was a big get. I mean, Jaden Jackson is an interior defensive lineman, a guy who shot from 3-star ranking all the way up to, I believe he's in the top 150 to 170 now. I know that he had long been a player everyone felt like had been underrated, and now he's gotten his due, and he's proven that time and again. You get a positional need. He's a premium position player with a ton of talent. I think what he can actually accomplish on the field from a skill set perspective is ideal, considering the fact, again, this is the class that's taking you into the SEC. OU has long tried to fix up the defensive line, especially the interior. Getting someone like Jaden Jackson, who seemed like an impossibility, is why I have him as my biggest get. But your thoughts on that, and then go ahead and hit me with yours as well.
Yeah, no, hard to argue with, and I think we've talked about it a few times. That combination of Stone and Jackson, their camaraderie, their friendship, play together in high school, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And that whole defensive line group, that power line that we've talked about a bunch of times, he's kind of the one that, I don't want to say he's overlooked, but with Stone and Nigel Smith and some other guys we may talk about a little later, there's so many names that it's almost like, don't forget this guy. Please don't forget this guy, because he's a game wrecker, and it's going to be fun to watch.
And to just add more to this, he is just one of the biggest gets because of everything that we just talked about. And then the moment he gets on campus for the mid-year enrollee stuff and bowl practices, everyone's freaking out like, this guy is so damn good. It just time and again, he shows he's one of the biggest gets for Oklahoma in this class.
He's a monster. He's a monstrous human, and look forward to watching him, seeing him in pads here coming up in the spring. Before too long, another guy who's a monstrous human is my pick, Devon Mitchell. Just scratches an itch. You know, Oklahoma, the tight end room, like we talked about during the season, left a lot to be desired. And that was a position that was so good for Oklahoma for so long. Going back, obviously, like Keith Jackson or something, but just even in the more modern era, Jermaine Gresham, Mark Andrews, what Grant Calcaterra was, what Braden Willis ended up being, a couple of years ago. Devon Mitchell, I love this guy. He feels like the next great Oklahoma tight end. Feels like an NFL tight end for sure. Reclassified up a year because he was ready. He was ready to do that. Obviously from the Dallas area originally, went and played high school football out in California. So you have two major high school football states and recruiting bases for every blue blood that there is. He had offers from everywhere. He could have went anywhere he wanted, pretty much. And Oklahoma got him. And it just feels like it's impossible that he won't be a huge part of the offense in the team before too long. Maybe even as soon as this year. Who knows? He's reclassified up a year, but we've talked about that tight end room's a little thin. He brought in a couple transfers. Would it shock anybody if Devon Mitchell's out there catching passes, right away from Jackson Arnold next year? Not really. So for those reasons, he's my pick for biggest get, because I just talk about going and getting an NFL player. That this is the guy. You just look at him, walk around. Doesn't even need to watch him play. Just when he's on visits and whatnot at games, talking to Brent Venables and pregame warmups. It's just like, holy moly, that kid does not like he's in high school, and it's just going to be really. I can't wait to watch him play, and I'm very excited about him. And I think for me, he's the biggest get.
Yeah, I still remember when we were out there at one of OU summer camps. And I'm watching receivers go through one-on-ones. And someone taps me on the shoulder, and I turn around, and it's you, looking like you just saw a ghost. And you're like, is that Devon Mitchell over there? Yeah. And I look, and sure enough, a guy that's almost bigger than every single coach on OU staff is roaming around with an OU T-shirt that he's filling out. Sure enough, Devon Mitchell. And since that day, Josh has been man crushing hard for every reason as well. I mean, not on top of being between Texas and California, you mentioned the reclassification. That can create a sense of urgency as well. Oh, this junior in high school is now in the senior class. We got to make sure that we're in this recruitment, because if he's reclassifying, that might mean he's closer to a decision. And it came close between Miami and Oklahoma, if you'll remember. Alabama was hovering as well. But that final week, basically OU solidified things. And as you mentioned, biggest get, typically you think of someone who addresses a positional need. We don't need to talk about OU's tight end room, but we might get to talk about Devon Mitchell next year, even though he's technically a high school junior. And I think, again, that checks a lot of boxes for someone who's a massive get for this program.
100%. Next one, day one ready. This is one that fans are always very interested in. Guy who can contribute right away. There's a few options here. We talked about a couple already, David Stone, Devon Mitchell, but elsewhere, those guys have been drafted. Elsewhere, day one ready, guys you think could come in right away this spring, next fall, and could make an impact on this team in 2024, though they were just signed.
Yeah, again, we can't pick players that have already been named, which is wildly frustrating as we continue to go through this list. But it didn't really affect my choice here because I'm going with the obvious Taylor Tatum. The number one ranked running back in America arrives at Oklahoma as a true three-down back with tremendous burst. I think he sees the field well. I think he has a great feel for the game, and he can be utilized in a number of different ways. And that's important. I mean, you want a player, and this is why Taylor finished as the number one ranked running back. And I should mention, he was named the number one running back and held on to that title throughout the entire cycle, and that's hard to do, folks. That's really hard to do. But people talk about rankings, Josh. Our guy, Gabe Brooks, who's a good friend of ours here in the Denton area, he is from East Texas. And Gabe, I give this guy a ton of credit, folks. And I think it's another reason why I say Taylor Tatum is day one ready. Taylor Tatum was named by Gabe Brooks as a top 100 player in this class his freshman year by us at 24/7 Sports. And he has still never played a down of varsity football. And so if you think about that logic for a second, like really think, how the hell does a guy get into the top 100 and he didn't play it down? Because everyone knew he was going to be ready. And I think everyone knows he's ready. And this is the other part of this too. When I look at day one ready, I stay away from the lines of scrimmage typically, because when you're an evaluator, you got to anticipate those big guys where their positions focus on strength, leverage, the body type. It's a little bit more of an adjustment period. Skill guys can get in there faster. And I think Taylor Tatum not only can do it at a high level because he's the number one running back and those skills translate, Josh, but you also look at OU's running back room. If we're talking day one ready, like Gavin Sawchuk's the guy, but Javante Barnes has a lot to prove. Caleb Hicks has a lot to prove. And Taylor Tatum's going to be right on their heels, man. I think for several reasons, this guy could step right into Oklahoma's running back room and play.
Yeah, really excited about Taylor Tatum. Both obviously the football player and selfishly the baseball player as well. For the two-way aspect of it, him and James Nesta both going to be a lot of fun. Guys who are trying to pull off both, and guys who seem to have a pure love of both, and are obviously very talented at both. So yeah, not going to get an argument for me on that one. And like we kind of talked about, that running back room is kind of in an interesting place. And if he's what we all think he is, which is the top running back in the class, why couldn't he get in there right away and have an impact next year? Mine, I'm going to go with, kind of going almost back to the Devon Mitchell conversation in terms of just fitting a need with Eugene Brooks. So Eugene Brooks, if you're really into it, you know who he is, but I think he's kind of almost not being talked about enough in this class. 4-star guy in our 2024, 4-star offensive lineman. He's the number 3 offensive lineman, interior offensive lineman in the class in our rankings. The top 100 player, top 10 player in California. It's a really, really talented kid. And he's listed we have him at 6'4", 320. That's pre-Schmitty, 6'4", 320. That's a big old boy. Coming in talking about the guard spots are really the biggest question mark on this offensive line. Maybe the whole offense, maybe the whole team for Oklahoma moving into next year. You got a kid like this. I mean, I'm not going to proclaim he's going to start in week 1, but he may be in the mix, right away. This is Tom Green has been banging this drum a little bit. This has been a name that he's really liked. I'm kind of stealing it because it's true. I mean, you look at his size, his frame, what he did in high school. You get Schmitty a hold of him, Beatenbow, if his technique and things like that can catch up to the size and the strength, which is already kind of there for a freshman, he might be able to slide in and be, in the conversation right away next year. And again, part of that is because, which has been heavily discussed on almost every show, it finds its way to come up. The offensive line is having so much turnover, but they went out and got some transfer pickups to try and fill those needs and those voids at the guard spots. But this is another option for you. And I think of the offensive linemen signed in this class, and there's several, and a lot of them are, guys who are project to be pretty solid players, and obviously Oklahoma is excited about. I think Brooks is maybe the one that jumps out to me as far as could be ready the fastest. And so that's why I go with him for day 1 ready.
Shed 60 plus pounds, more than 60 pounds of body weight, was a 3-star player, was a guard, had some decent offers, but completely reworked his body, moved to tackle, and went from, I think, a low to mid 3-star to he's the number 73 player nationally and a top 3 interior offensive lineman in America.
Right.
And he proved it. And that goes into day 1 ready, right? What are you doing best on best? And at the Under Armour Showcase Week, he whooped everybody. I mean, he was probably the best offensive lineman in attendance. And like you mentioned, the turnover at that spot, especially at guard, they've got some guys that they like. But we've also seen Oklahoma at times have to rotate guys in the front 5. And Eugene Brooks, to me, there is no question or argument in a class of offensive linemen that features 5 guys coming in. Eugene Brooks is the most day 1 ready of that group. There is no debate. And for that reason, I totally understand why you're making the pick. All of that stuff considered into what Eugene Brooks can be in Norman right away.
Yeah, 100%. Next one, underrated. So this is a guy who maybe, this is one that the David Stones of the world would not qualify for. Devon Mitchell wouldn't qualify for this either, certainly. Guy who's maybe a little not under the radar. We'll get into that in a little bit, but underrated in terms of maybe just not the high 4-star or 5-star guy that you think is going to maybe outplay where he's rated or ranked by the time his career at Oklahoma is said and done.
Yeah, so the key distinction here to me, we're going to talk under the radar, but under the radar versus underrated, Josh, if you agree with me, is if we're talking an underrated player, it has to do with the rankings or the ratings, because everyone wants to know who's going to outplay their ranking, like you mentioned. Under the radar, which is going to be our last accolade, is more of just a guy that we think isn't getting his due or not getting talked enough.
Right.
Michael Boganowski gets talked about a lot, but I feel like he is an underrated player because I honestly, Josh, I'm looking at this. We were trying to build out this exercise last night to prepare for the show, and I looked at a lot of these players' rankings within OU's 2024 class, and I was like, honestly, I think our rankings team does a hell of a job because a lot of these guys, I'm going through it, and it makes sense when you understand the context of the rankings. A lot of these ratings assigned to OU's recruits, they make sense to me. But I think the one guy that really continues to jump out to me in terms of who could elevate is Michael Boganowski for a few reasons. When you're evaluating a player, you're looking for a lot of different things. Frame, the film, but also multi-sport background, multi-positional ability, things of that nature, character, all this stuff. Michael Boganowski has the frame of a linebacker, is going to play safety. He could drop down to cheetah if he needs to. I think he's going to be at a play weight of 6'2", 220, 225 maybe when it's all said and done. And he can play up at the top of the defense. But on top of that, man, he's playing wide receiver, quarterback, wildcat quarterback. quarterback. He's doing everything in high school. And he has long been praised as someone off the field who is just an awesome guy. Like, he fits what Brent Venables looks for. And you can see a concerted effort, Josh, and this is why I kind of looked at him for the underrated tab. You can see a concerted effort by this staff to address the Isaiah Simmons role within this defense, right? Brent coached Isaiah Simmons at Clemson. He was a gigantic athlete who could play safety, whether that's strong or free. He could play nickel. He could play linebacker. He could rush off the edge. And I think someone who can do that can outplay a ranking, and that's why I think Michael Boganowski, he has the highest rated 3-star grade of an 89, which basically means he's projected to be a high day 3 pick in the NFL draft, so like a 4th to 7th rounder. But if there's someone in that commit list who could climb his way into round 3, I think what the NFL places emphasis on with today's game, versatile safety, linebacker, hybrid types are incredibly important to have. I mean, Dallas has like 3 or 4 of them just down the street from me, and Michael Boganowski can do all of that, and that's why I think he's kind of the underrated guy of this class.
100%. I'm going to go local with Xavier Robinson, 3-star running back. Robinson is composite rated the number 697 player in the class. That's his composite metric. Number 48 running back from us. He's a 3-star kid, 88 rate score. I've had the pleasure of meeting him a couple times. He's a great kid. I had the pleasure of watching him several times. He's a monster. He's an absolute monster. He's a behemoth. As a running back, 6'2", 220 is what we have him at. He reminds me, like, I've said this a couple of times. I want to stress, I'm not saying he is this guy because that's an outrageous bar, but he reminds me so much of Derrick Henry, the way he runs, and that's what he is at the high school level. He just runs over people, and he has sneaky speed. He can run away from people too. He doesn't always need to in high school because he can just run through people, like I said, but he's got speed. I watched him at a game earlier this year hurdle a guy. I mean, he is a freak athlete, and he's a monstrous human. I just feel like, you know, with Taylor Tatum, we talked about already, and the guys they have in place, there's just not a whole lot of – I mean, people in Oklahoma are excited about him and know Xavier Robinson. Look at his high school stats, by the way. They're hilarious. Some career numbers that are just silly, video game stuff. This kid has got a lot of ability, and, you know, I don't know how it's going to translate, but I just feel like if there's anybody who could be that, how the heck was he rated this low? It feels like he fits in that category as good as anyone. And, you know, you got the Oklahoma connection. He's got all his Carl Albert teammates coming with him that we talked about a bunch of times, not in this class, but in the next one, that 2025 group. And it just feels like I could see a path where Xavier Robinson in a year or two is a big part of the offense, even if it's just pounding at the goal line. Like, he is a monster, and I'm really excited to watch him play. And I've had the pleasure a couple times in high school. And like I said, it's been, I don't know if there's been anybody more fun to watch for me in high school because of what he can do out there. But watching that translate to the next level is going to be a lot of fun to watch. So Xavier Robinson, my pick for underrated. Like I said, number 697 overall player in the composite, which, I mean, that I feel like he's going to outplay that. But we'll see.
The composite is a generated algorithm based on all 4 recruiting publications, folks. So basically, 24/7 might have him ranked a certain way, but other folks may have him ranked differently, and that could drop him down. This is all I'll say on Xavier Robinson. The mantra you say in the scouting world is good players don't go down. Xavier Robinson does not go down.
Yeah.
And he's going to be a really darn good football player because of it. So
he's a big man who is very nimble on his feet, athlete. Going to be fun to watch. Number 5, most excited. Now, this one's probably the most subjective one of all of them. This is really up to you.
This is tough.
Which one just jumps out is I just really can't wait to see this guy. He doesn't fit in the other ones necessarily, but I want to see him play.
All right, so a little bit of background here. I really had a debate because the guy that I'm going to put for under the radar coming up next is probably my most excited. But then there were other guys like Devon Mitchell was a guy I was going to pick for most excited, but you took him in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm in a world of hurt, right? And you're picking a guy for this as well, who I also was going to pick. So I'm looking at the board. I'm going through the commit list last night, and I'm like, man, who do I take? Because like so many of these players that I wanted to pick here have been taken. But one name really jumped out to me, and I think a lot of Oklahoma fans will join me in the sentiment. I am wildly excited to see what Daniel Akinkunmi does in Norman, Oklahoma.
Yeah.
That dude went on one visit, his first college football game in America was in Norman, Oklahoma, and he said, I'm done. I want to play here. I want to play for Bill Bedenbaugh. I want to play at Oklahoma, and I want to be the next great offensive lineman that comes out of the program. And since then, he has been grinding tirelessly to meet the expectation level already set for him. But he's been doing this for years now. I mean, folks might remember I wrote a story on his journey, and the guy would bring a portable microwave with him on all the train rides he would take because that was the only time he would have to eat food. And he's incredibly raw. But when you look at a guy who's 6'5", 300 plus pounds, has great feet, clearly has the natural athletic ability, and while he may not be polished, I like guys who care. You know, I like guys who give a damn about what they're doing. And those are the people I like to be around. Those are the kind of people you want in a college football program. And those are the kind of folks that Brent Venables is trying to bring in. We've already heard, and we've noted it on Sooners Illustrated to our VIP subscribers. The immediate reviews on Daniel were that he was like the most coachable player they had ever seen. He is always trying to accept some level of coaching in order to get better. And it doesn't matter what that is. It could be something as simple as how to move his feet all the way up to the intricacies of playing the offensive line and offensive tackle spot at the D1 college football level. And no matter what it is, he has time and again showed that while he has a lot to prove in America as an overseas player, he's willing to accept the challenge and try and meet it head on. And that's why I'm really excited to see what this project, if you will, turns into, because he's got every element to become an incredibly successful human being and football player coming from England, of all places.
Yeah, it feels like he could have fit into the underrated also.
100%.
Because, like you said, he's coming from overseas. That's a hard eval for you guys. But, he's got the size, certainly seems to have the right attitude. He's attacked everything the right way. He is a really exciting player. So I don't disagree with you at all. And what a fun story it'll be if he turns into, the player that we think he could be. I mean, what a journey for him. And the backstory is already awesome. And so he's got the vlog. He took over the vlog mantle. Some other guys have carried that torch. He has provided that great YouTube channel. Go check that out. But that's a great pick and one that I agree with. I'll go low-hanging fruit, but I'm going to go with Danny Okoye for my most excited. I went to his commitment back, I think it was in May. It was in the spring sometime. And I never met him before. I had seen some highlights. But, you heard about him. This kid plays for a homeschool team up in Tulsa, NOAA, which is a homeschool program. And you're just kind of wondering, you've seen some highlights of him just dominating, but it's like, what do you do with it? He's playing, a homeschool league, things like that. It's hard just to know. I went in there not totally knowing what to expect. When he walked in, it was like, holy moly, that's a D1 full play. That's an OU full. That's an SEC defensive end. And the personality to match, just electricity. We talked about the time, the hat spin when he put it on. The post, commitment interview afterward was awesome. One of the best ones that I've ever gotten to do. He was great. The personality, the play style. He's a fun follow on social media. He's like everything you want in a player from a fan's perspective. He's a lot like Danny Stutzman in that regard, just different position. But in terms of the way he's going to play, 100% max effort, have fun doing it, be a leader. Like he he's going to perfectly fit into that role after Stutzman goes, in my opinion. Like him and David Stone both, but all of it, the personality, the play style, just kind of all of it together is just, I can't wait to watch that guy and cover him and talk to him more often than just, once at his commitment, talk to him regularly as a player at OU, because he checks so many boxes. So for me, he's my most excited. What a player, what a personality. Really, really excited to watch him play.
I've long compared him to just an alien, like a total unknown, but you see it and it's like, this is not of this planet. And if it all translates, the sky is the limit. And I can make you an argument, we're talking about most excited. I can make you the argument that both of these guys also fall under the umbrella of highest ceiling, because offensive tackle, defensive end, premium positions. Both are incredible from a frame perspective, athletic ability perspective, and even just the leadership and character standpoints. Danny Okoye and Daniel Akinkunmi check both boxes. All these players in this class are really talented and great guys. But these two, to me, like you mentioned, just so much that they can do and so much that they are off the field could combine into something really special. And Danny Okoye, get just otherworldly when you look at the body, and then just from he's putting 600 plus pounds on the straight bar to casually hurdling his own teammates while they're standing up in practice. A tremendous get for Oklahoma, and really excited to see him too, because this is another guy who felt like an impossibility, and now he's one of the biggest members of this Oklahoma class.
That power line, kind of the centerpiece of this whole thing. All right, last one, under the radar. Like we said, different than underrated. Not necessarily his rating isn't high. You can go high or low. But it's a guy who's maybe not being talked about enough among fans, among us, in the media, whatever your reasoning is. Under the radar guy in this class.
I think everyone who has followed my work knows where I'm going to go with this, but it's got to be Reggie Powers. He committed to Oklahoma in the middle of a road loss to Kansas.
Yep, I remember.
And it literally went under the radar. And it's the funny part of this too, man. His recruitment didn't even grab the spotlight or the headlines. He decommitted from Michigan State, and it didn't take long, man. If I remember correctly, it took maybe 2 or 3 weeks tops, maybe less than that, for him to decommit from Michigan State. Oklahoma made the call. He got on campus. It was going to be an official visit, but if folks will remember, he was like, you know what? Let me just take it unofficial. Like, I don't need the glitz and glam. He takes a random unofficial trip, I believe, to like the West Virginia game or something, and turns right around and commits. And it was done. Like, no drama, no discussion in any like major recruiting show or whatever that we do here at 24/7. But Josh, he's the highest ranked defensive back commit for Oklahoma. And I made this note on the site the other day. In any other cycle, the highest ranked DB at a place like OU is going to get talked about every other minute of every day. Like, it just is hilarious to me that he is at a premium position, highly ranked player, 4-star kid, finishes in the top 170, and the whole time, just from his decommitment to Michigan State through his entire commitment to Oklahoma, rarely ever got talked about. But he arrived on campus, has been killing it in winter workouts. I've heard that he actually got recognized by OU's coaching staff for his efforts in winter workouts. I believe they gave him a chip or something. Yeah, Reggie Powers is just, I think he's a hard worker. I think he's a really darn good football player. I think he is going to be successful because he doesn't need the attention or hype, but he's going to kick your ass when he gets on the field. And for those reasons, I'm really high on this guy. And I think it's not necessarily the ranking. It's just he has flown literally under the radar, in my opinion.
100%. Agree with you completely. There's a lot of really good guys in the secondary in this class. Reggie Powers certainly right up there among them. Last one here. I'll go with Zion Raggins, wide receiver. He just kind of feels like with what Emmett Jones has done in the portal and the guys he has committed in 2025, which he has multiple that are, attention grabbers. And then in 2024, it feels like it's kind of centered more around Zion Kearney, and rightfully so, a guy who almost found his way into some of my picks here. Zion Raggins kind of a little bit forgotten. And let us not forget that this kid is outrageously fast. He has mind-boggling speed. They went and pulled him out of the state of Georgia. He had a Georgia offer. They went and pulled him out of the state. He's a 4-star composite guy. Also had other big offers on a Florida State was in there too. He just has a lot of natural ability. He's so speedy. And it just, one of these guys that you just feel like you could see kind of really bursting onto the scene here before too long. I mean, again, Emmett Jones get all these receivers coming in this class and the next one, and he's put in crazy work in the portal. So they're low at this position, so it's easy to kind of fly under the radar a little bit right now at that spot. But I feel like Zion Raggins, for whatever reason, maybe it's having the same name as Kearney or just all the different guys they have coming in. He's kind of one of those guys that I'm even guilty of, but kind of being like, oh yeah, this guy is crazy athletic, crazy fast, has so much natural ability. I need to remember that he's coming and that he has a chance to make an impact before too long, because he is one that's a lot of fun. And whenever he did come in, we talked about on the show then, I looked at some highlights and stuff. I remember being like very, wow, look at this guy go. And so I almost, as much for myself, as much as the listeners and viewers on the show, remember Zion Raggins. Remember the name. Keep that in mind. Put it in the tickler file down the road. This guy's going to be a lot of fun.
I think it's an excellent pick. And to close it out real quick, just a couple off the top honorable mentions of guys that I wanted to get in here. Nigel Smith was very close to making most excited I want to see, because of him being the number one defensive end target on their board, and they got him, and he's going to play several different techs on the defensive line. Eli Bowen is one who I wanted to name for under the radar, because Peyton Bowen was literally on everybody's radar, and Eli Bowen just, I remember I pulled up to a high school football game and he just committed, and that was that. And so a couple of quick ones I want to throw out there as a few honorable mention types. Andy Bass could have been named to a lot of these as well. I just can't wait to see what he does in Norman.
Yeah, Andy Bass, yeah, you're right. He could have fallen into the excited just because he's just I've never seen a more ripped quarterback, maybe a more ripped high school football player ever. And another one, kind of like Xavier Robinson, I've had the pleasure of seeing him play a couple of times, and it was always just hilarious because it would just be a QB draw that he would just run through people and run for 80 yards and a touchdown. He's a lot of fun, and it just feels like one of those guys that even though he was a quarterback and he's doing a position change, he's just a good enough football player that he'll find a way. He'll find a way to get on the field and make an impact. So, yeah, that's a good one to make sure we get in there.
He's a PWO for Oklahoma, and he's the highest grade 3-star of an 89, Josh.
Yeah.
That is bananas. I've never seen anything like that before, on the record. I can't wait to see what he becomes at Oklahoma, because that's an awesome get when we look at this class.
The trick play opportunities, too, with him are so high. So high. Because the guy can throw it. He played quarterback at a really good program in Heritage Hall. The guy can throw it. So high. All right, that was fun. Hopefully people enjoyed that. Good way to kind of surmise the class, and excited to see the vast majority of these guys in just a little bit. Obviously, they're doing winter workouts now, but most of these guys enrolled early, and so they'll be there in spring ball, and we'll get a chance to see them and talk to them, and the spring game here before you know it. So a lot of these guys, you don't have to wait that much longer to see what they look like in uniform. They got their numbers. Like I said, David Stone wearing 0. Great. Is it Jaden Jackson or Nigel Smith that's also wearing a single digit? I think Nigel Smith maybe is wearing
6.
6. Yeah, okay. I remember single digit. I can remember what.
And Zion Kearney got 7, I believe, which is
that's good. That's a good speedy number. Mm-hmm. I like that. I think Xavier Robinson's wearing 21. Good running back number. So good to see him. Good to see
Devon Mitchell got 84, but I really wanted to see him in an 82 jersey. That just felt like a perfect fit. But 84
it felt like a Gresham 18 might have been headed his way for me, but didn't go that way. But 84 is a solid number. TD Lee Morris.
True.
Caught a lot of touchdowns.
He's gonna get a lot of balls thrown his way in the end zone. So I guess
that's true. That's
very
true.
Plus TD Lee, man, Allen High School. Devon
That's true. That's true. Good connection there. Back to the Kyler Murray days. All right, so some other recruiting stuff here. Yeah, back on schedule. So a few other recruiting little notes and nuggets here, and then we'll do a little dash of hoops on the way out here. We talked about Ryan Foji a little bit on the Tuesday show. Want to get your input, though. If you missed it, 3-star offensive tackle from Cypress, Texas, committed to Oklahoma earlier this week. Just how did it come together for you, from what you've heard in Collin and your eval, what you kind of make of him in terms of fitting in, down the road for Oklahoma? What kind of a get is this for 2025 in your estimation?
Yeah, Oklahoma was the first to offer Ryan Foji, and he committed kind of just like, all right, I'm good. Like, if you'll have me, I'm ready to commit. And they took him. And I don't want to call it a surprise, but it was a welcomed addition from that weekend. And I'll get into that a little bit more as to why. But when you look at him as a player, I went down there to see him and Jonte Newman, who are two of the best offensive tackles in a loaded 2025 offensive line cycle in the state of Texas. I know I talk about it a lot, but just the front line talent in the Lone Star State along the offensive line across the state is ridiculous in 2025. And Ryan Foji is part of that. He is a highest graded 3-star of an 89 currently. That's an early assignment. So I think this is definitely a guy who's going to climb into 4-star territory. And for several reasons. You look at the build. I did a little scouting report on the site, so I would welcome subscribers, or if you want to be a subscriber, go ahead and sign up to go check that out. But basically, incredibly projectable frame. And when I went to go see Ryan, I was like, man, that's an offensive tackle right there. Him and Jonte have incredible builds for young offensive linemen. Now, Jonte, I think, could kick inside a little bit easier as well. Foji, to me, is strictly a tackle, but Oklahoma probably took him saying that is as tackle of a tackle as you're going to get. Long arms, well-built at 275. He's got a little bit of muscle to him. I like the base, but not necessarily all that filled out up top, and that's what you want. You want to build him up more than you want to melt him down in today's college football. But at the end of it all, when the ball is snapped, Josh, this is one of my first takeaways when I'm watching him in person. And obviously you can watch the tape. In person, I was like, man, this is a far more refined pass protector than you're supposed to be as a true junior in high school. The first quarter or so, I couldn't stop watching him because of how good he was in pass protection. And he was up against Cy Ranch, which is a really quality program down there in that district area of North Houston. And they have this defensive lineman there who's a pretty solid player. And I believe he was kind of going back and forth between facing Foji and Newman. And I would say both those guys got the better of that talented edge rusher at Cy Ranch. And Foji, he hardly ever oversets. But he can meet you on the perimeter if you're an edge speed rusher. He can hold his own inside against bigger guys. I think he's really quality in the tackle pull action. I would like to see him in an offense that would utilize him that way, and I think Oklahoma will. And overall, he's probably someone who is a little bit more advanced of a player in certain areas that typically you're not supposed to be as advanced as at his age. Yeah. And then the frame is just awesome. And so I think Oklahoma got themselves a player that they were on right away for good reason. I think he can play left tackle. I think he can play right tackle, which he does at Bridgeland High. And he's a really good kid, too. And that checks a box for Oklahoma as well. Again, full scouting report from me is on the side. I really like the get. And I'm excited to see what he becomes later down the line because, again, I think this guy's ranking is going to go up.
Yeah, no, we talked about that on Tuesday just in terms of, like you said, he's an 89. Very high chance or good chance, I guess I should say, that he'll be a 4-star before it's said and done, because a lot of people jump at the, another 3-star. This kid, it's early. It's very early. He's an 89. He's going to probably get there before it's all said and done. Comes off the junior day, weekend. We talked about it last week. They had all this momentum coming off of last weekend. They followed that up with another one this past weekend. I guess it's kind of a little touching base in terms of how are things kind of moving positively for Oklahoma coming off of, the second Junior Day weekend. After they had the star-studded one the week before, what was kind of the sentiment you got coming out of this past weekend where more guys, made their way down in Norman for, a big kind of visit party weekend there?
Yeah, so why I said earlier that Foji might be, quote-unquote, like a surprise addition is off of that first Junior Day weekend, like you mentioned, that was the heavy hitter one. It had headliner types left and right, priority targets that had been on OU's board for a long time. OU was in solid position with a lot of them as well, which I think is important to note. And why I mention all of that, the following weekend, which was this past weekend's the Junior Day that we're now discussing, I think Oklahoma went from, all right, we're going to have a ton of guys on campus that we feel really good about. And it's obviously going to generate headlines left and right. This past weekend's fans were like, all right, now what? Because of all the action that happened from that first one. And I'm here to tell you, and I think I told a few of our subscribers, was like, look, Foji committing was the best you were going to get, period. A lot of those dudes on campus in Norman the following weekend, which is obviously this Junior Day, again, that we're discussing here, a lot of those dudes compared to the other Junior Day, these guys that were there in Norman really just were there to kind of get to know the program. A lot of these dudes, and I literally noted it time and again in our visit lists and all that, I was like, look, there are a lot of players that you see on this list who are highly ranked players or impressive talents, but you may not have ever heard their names before in your life. And there's a reason for that. They had guys from Arizona, Georgia, the Midwest that they had some ground to cover or they needed to build familiarity with. And there were a couple of guys that they tried to get on campus that couldn't make it, or there were a couple of guys that were set to be on the visit list that didn't make it as well. So, yeah, like it's one of those that it's tough because off the first Junior Day weekend with all those talented players that they were in really solid position with, that kind of creates this false norm. But the flip side of the coin, because there's always another side, sometimes you have recruiting events to just get to know guys and have them get to know you. And so Ryan Foji committing was a surprise because he was probably one of the several other names that OU maybe had to just try and cover some ground with. I mean, Foji was like at Texas's Junior Day the weekend before. And it was like, I don't know. And so, yeah, man, it's one that I think a lot of people are like on the edge of their seats waiting to see what came of that weekend. But folks, sometimes the bottom line is you just got to start somewhere. And I think this past Junior Day, whether it's like a Cooper Perry, who's a 4-star wide receiver from Arizona, the number 1 ranked player out there in Arizona, to Elijah Barnes in Dallas at Skyline High, Isaiah Gibson, the edge rusher in Georgia. You just wanted to get them an opportunity to get to know you a little bit more. And that's probably all you were going to ask of the weekend.
The lesson here is to become a VIP subscriber. About 247sports.com, Sooners Illustrated. Collin's been all over it. Busy time, obviously on the recruiting side, there's big visit weekends. It just got commitment. Collin's had a few crystal balls in. We talked about that last week. So more movement likely to come over the next couple of months or so. And when a workout intel, lots of other great stuff on the site. So again, VIP subscriber, Oklahoma.247sports.com. Place to be right now for all of CK's intel and input. Do want to wrap up the show here with a little bit of hoops. We've gone a little bit long, so I won't go real long here. But BYU on Tuesday night, we talked about it on the Tuesday show. We bumped the show back to Tuesday. Needed that game really bad. The weekend in Orlando went very poorly, especially on the offensive end for Oklahoma. They came back, they put up 82 on BYU, and J.V. McCollum played really well, scored 20 points. They got a huge bounce-back game from Lo Suzon, which they really needed. Early in that game, I'm on the baseline shooting some highlights, and Los missed an open 3. And then he had another look later. He was open, and he kind of looked at it, but he hesitated and ended up passing it off. And that next time out, J.V. McCollum, I watched him, came up to him, looked him right in the eye and said, shoot the ball. Shoot the ball. Like, we you're one of our guys. You're open. You got to shoot the ball. And almost literally the next possession down, he had another open look. He fired away. He hit it. And it just seemed like after that, he was back to being himself. He had a great game, probably the best Susan game in a while. And they needed it. Him and McCollum both played very well in the backcourt. Rivaldo Suarez continues to be great off the bench for Oklahoma. He's been just tremendous off the bench really all year, but especially in Big 12 play. They have leaned on him heavily. And he was really good again on Tuesday. They really need that win. They got it. That's actually their best win, like metrically, of the season. It's a quad one win. BYU was number 7 in the net coming in. We talked about that on Tuesday. So that's a really big win, and they needed it bad. They're in great shape for the tournament. We talked about at the beginning of the year, probably needed 7, 8 wins or so in the Big 12 to get to the tournament. They're already at 5. You're just past the halfway point. So you're in pretty good shape for the tournament. Oklahoma State this weekend, Bedlam. Oklahoma State is not good. They're in last place. Mike Boynton has had Porter Moser's number. This is the time. This is the time to rectify that because Oklahoma State is struggling. Houston absolutely hammered them the other night. And OU's coming off a big win. They're going to be at home. It's supposed to be a big crowd at the LNC. I think they said it was sold out, actually. So should be a great atmosphere. And you just got to hope to build on it. Collin, obviously, like we said, kind of yesterday, the schedule toughens up. You got Baylor and Kansas next week. So you got a big win. You got Oklahoma State coming. You need to take advantage and try to ride that into some big games coming up. But they really needed that on Tuesday. That was a good bounce-back win. And as Porter Moser said post-game, they did it for Toby Keith on Tuesday. Passed away. They held a moment of silence for him pregame. They had his guitar and his hat in his spot, which was really cool. And then they went out there and they won for him. So a pretty cool night at the LNC, and they'll look to build on it and carry that into Bedlam this weekend.
Red Solo Cups this weekend, right?
Yeah, that's the rumor. I don't know if that's official or not, but that's the word on the street that they're going to sell drinks in Red Solo Cups, which is pretty cool.
I love that, man. I just, rest in peace to Toby Keith, obviously. Pay my respects, but that would be another really cool way to add a layer to Bedlam and pay respects to one of the greatest. Last thing I'll say, what's the record again that they have between Oklahoma State and Texas right now? Under Porter Moser?
1-9, I think it is.
Man, you better win. You better win.
1-9. I believe. Yeah, I'm certain that it's 1-9. It's 0-5 against Texas, 1-4 against Oklahoma State. So, yeah, they go to Austin in the regular season finale. You're gonna have another chance. But yeah, this is the time. Oklahoma State swept them last year. This is the time. They swept them in 3 games also last year. They beat them both regular season and knocked them out of the Big 12 tournament. So on a major skid against the Pokes, and it's been a rough year in Stillwater. So now's the time.
Well, hey, shout out real quick to everyone who already bought a ticket, man. That's cool to hear that it's sold out. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Tom and I will be there at the LNC. Should be fun. Always is for Bedlam. It's not quite like football where there's this finality of it because it feels like there's room for Bedlam to continue in the other sports. But it's not a given. So who knows? The next time Oklahoma State goes to Lloyd Noble Center after this weekend. So good to see fans are coming out for it because, who knows? I don't know. I mean, what that's going to look like, moving forward. They're probably going to play once a year, right? I mean, they're not going to be able to play twice in the non-con. And they may play that. They may go back and forth. They may neutral site it. They may not play at all. I mean, who knows? So if this is the last time they come to Norman for a while, good to see it being sent off with a big crowd and, some excitement around it. So look forward to that this weekend. Again, Tom and I will be there to keep up coverage on the site. Tom will be all over it. And then YouTube channel, Porter Moser, player reaction to follow from the Lloyd Noble Center. I think that's it. Fun show. Hopefully people enjoyed the superlatives and a good way to wrap up the class. Good recruiting news. And we look forward to the weekend for hoops. Like we said, Bedlam coming up. We'll be back on Monday, the plan. Wrap up the weekend for OU basketball. Also, OU softball got their season started today. James Jackson covering the softball team for us. So be sure to keep up with his coverage throughout the year. OU Baseball Media Day was yesterday. You can watch those press conferences on the YouTube channel right now. I plan to do at least a little preview on the Monday show. So tune in for that as we get ready for the start of baseball season next week. Feels really good. Get that spring vibes. And All the
women's
way
basketball too, right? Got 7 straight win or something like that.
Yeah, they knocked off TCU last night. A good call. 7th straight Big 12 win. They're 10-1 in the Big 12, which it's like every single show. I say the same thing because it's startling, the turnaround, and they just continue to win. It is pretty amazing. So another win for them last night. Good catch. 10-1 in the Big 12. First place, all alone in first place in the Big 12. Pretty amazing. So a lot to be excited about in OU Sports right now. And be sure to come aboard the site, VIP subscriber, get all the intel from all the sports, VIP analysis, things like that. And then, of course, the podcast, we're continuing to break it down, has moved through February, home stretch of basketball season, spring football coming up. Good times are on the horizon here. So hopefully you join aboard with us on the site and on the podcast. All right, that's it. We'll see you on Monday. Tom Green, James Jackson will join me then. For Collin Kennedy, I'm Josh Callaway. We'll see you guys next time on the Sooners Illustrated podcast.